Why do we procrastinate? Why do we procrastinate? This is the question that I am addressing on this episode of the PS We Expire podcast. I am Morgan, and I am so glad that you're here. On this podcast, we talk about all the hard things and all the good things. There's no topic that is off limits. And the topic of procrastination, I'm definitely going to give you some really practical tools to address procrastination in your life. But on a much bigger picture, I want to talk about the feelings that come up that contribute to procrastination and what that means for our lives on a bigger level than just I'm putting off doing the dishes. So thank you for joining me. Before we get into the episode, I will share something with you that has been percolating in my mind for a really long time. So I have really wanted to bring about and facilitate and be at retreats. I have found over the years such great shifts in my perspective on life. I have found really wonderful relationships as a result of going to retreats, whether they're a day or multi-day retreats, as I have gotten to know other people, as I've gotten to know myself more, as these have been environments that have lent themselves to some really deep healing and deep work. And so I have been craving this, not just to go to it, but to also be the person who puts these things together. So I'm going to make this super duper easy for you. I don't have any details for you yet, at all. I don't have anything in the works, but I just have this belief that it's important to me. And so I know that means it's important to someone else as well. So at the very, very top of the show notes in this episode, I have a link that will take you directly to a landing page where all you're going to do is put in your email address. That's it. Because I don't want you to have to be follow all these links and then send me. I just want to make it super duper easy for you. That's all you're going to do. You're not going to get a shit ton of emails from me or anything like that. This really is just a message to say, Morgan, I don't know what you're proposing either, but what you're talking about sounds like something I might be interested in. This is not put your credit card information and sign up, because there's nothing to sign up to. But if this is something that also piques your curiosity, your interest, if you're also feeling a pull to get connected in a different way to people, find more people that think about life the way that you do, and that you also want to hang out and do some cool mind-body things, just click that link in the show notes. It'll take you right to that page. In fact, why don't you pause this episode right now? I promise I'll be right here when you get back. Pause it. Go, link, sign up. Okay, good. You're back. Thanks for doing that. I'm really excited to, at some point, when details get figured out and place and all of that, that I can send you a message and let you know all the details. So anyway, thank you for joining me for this episode all about procrastination. I like to think of procrastination as almost like a mental constipation. I'm so procrastinated right now. So as I'm talking about procrastination today, I want to talk about some super practical tips for reducing procrastination, but I also want to move on to discussing a much, much more insidious type of procrastination that all of us do, and then how to apply the actual practical procrastination buster habits and mindset to the really big things that we're procrastinating on. So first out of the gate, what exactly is procrastination? I would say that procrastination is when you know that you have something to do and you delay doing it. That's all procrastination is. That we are avoiding the emotion that comes with doing whatever the activity is. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be something that is hard or something that is super uncomfortable to do. Maybe it's just boring. Maybe it's monotonous. Maybe it's a task that you've done a billion times and you don't want to do it again. I mean, the things that come to my mind right away are the dishes or the laundry or cleaning the toilets. Well, I make my kids do that now, but those types of things where it's just it's monotonous, it's boring. And then there are also things that we procrastinate on that are really, really uncomfortable. So all of it is that we are avoiding really the emotion of whatever is tied to that activity. So in this episode, I want to talk about how to address your procrastination and really, again, like what the fallout is from allowing procrastination to be something that we habitually do. So the first is just like 5 simple, practical ways to stop procrastinating. One way that I have found super duper helpful is just to set a timer. So not only will it be setting a timer to start the task, but I also could use a timer for that task. So for instance, if it is doing the dishes, maybe I'll say, okay, in 15 minutes, I'm going to do the dishes. So I'll set a timer for 15 minutes. And a lot of times I'll be like, well, shit, if I'm going to set a timer for 15 minutes, I might as well just do it now. And the other way is I'll say, okay, I'm going to spend 15 minutes doing the dishes. And typically, like, it doesn't even end up taking that long. We spend way more time procrastinating frequently than it actually takes to do the task. So set timers. Often what will happen too is that as the timer is going, you just kind of get into the flow of whatever the task is, and the timer might go off and you're like, it's fine, I'm already in it, I'm doing it. This happens to me a lot with writing, whether it is for school or whether it's, something that I'm working on personally, where it's just a slog to sit down at the keyboard and actually get moving. Now, if you think about this in a really practical sense, it makes perfect sense that it takes more energy to get started than it does to continue. So that is where procrastination lives, is in that realization that it just takes a greater amount of energy to get going on something than it does to continue once you are in motion. So just be aware of that procrastination kind of component is the energy required to get something started. But once you get into it, you've got a flow going, you've got the movement already happening, you've already got your hands all soapy so you can finish doing the dishes and it's fine. So the first one is set timers, and the second one is break big tasks into smaller ones. So going back to this school example, let's say that I have to study for a test, which I actually do have to do because I have a biology exam tomorrow, and I have been procrastinating studying for this exam. One of the reasons why I've been procrastinating on it is because it feels like too big of a project. If we have this kind of this like monster thing that we want to do, it almost would be like if somebody told you have to eat this elephant and you just see the entire elephant and you're like, there's no way I'm going to do that. But this is a really terrible example. You just have to eat the elephant one bite at a time. Ew, what a gross example. But I feel like I've heard that somewhere else from someone very wise. So I'll just share it with you. If you're going to eat a whole elephant, you have to do it one bite at a time. Now, a good question would be, where would you start? Anyway, we don't need to go into that. But break the big task into smaller ones. So if I'm studying for my biology exam, I might spend some time thinking about what exactly I need to do in order to study, or what exactly that means. So maybe it's number 1, I skim chapters 1 through 9 and do the chapter reviews. The second task is to create terminology cards. The third task is review notes from lectures. The fourth task is to set aside time to study, maybe in 30-minute increments. Do you see how I'm taking this big task of studying for a biology exam and breaking it down into actual little bite-sized pieces? Because I am procrastinating on that because it just feels too overwhelming. It would be the same as if you were like, my entire house is a mess and I am going to clean the whole thing. Your brain is going to be like, hell no, like that is way too much energy expended. That is way too big of a task. And so you break that big goal or that big task into smaller things. And just a little side note, it helps a lot too if you actually put these things on your calendar and then you start keeping those commitments to yourself, whether they're household tasks, school tasks, work tasks, whatever. But then it's almost like you're creating an environment where when you don't want to do it, there is less resistance because you've already planned ahead of time when you're going to do it. So you're just like hacking your procrastination tendencies by addressing the time situation by using timers or putting things on your calendars. And then you're also addressing the overwhelm of too big of a task by breaking it down into smaller ones. Another one that I thought of is like if you need to mow the lawn, maybe the first task is that you check the weather and decide what day you're going to do it. And the second task is that you make sure that you have enough gas in the gas can, because there is nothing worse than going to mow the lawn and then realizing that you're out of gas. And I wonder if that plays into our procrastination a bit when we have these like memories of when a task took us way longer than we thought it was going to, or it got dragged out over many more hours or days or weeks than we thought it was going to. And so that's what we think is going to happen. And so we just avoid it altogether. Okay, so that's the second one, is to break big tasks into smaller ones. The third one, I struggle with this one so much. You have to be ruthless about your primary distractions. You have to get really honest about your typical distractors that you go to. And I mean, pretty high on my list is getting on Instagram. So pretty high on my list will be like, this is really what it is that I start to get into the feeling of overwhelm about a thing that I have to do. And I don't like that feeling. I don't like feeling overwhelmed. And so I distract myself from the feeling of overwhelm by getting my quick little dopamine hits. And my method of getting that fix is through Instagram. So I shared this on my social media. Is that kind of ironic? Anyway, this little tactic that I ended up having to come up with in order to be much more ruthless with that distraction is that it wasn't enough. It was not enough for me to just delete the app off of my phone, because in a moment of weakness or a moment in the bathroom, I would be like, I'll just download the app right now. And then, 20 minutes later, my legs are asleep and I've been taking a shit for 20 minutes, when I know that it only actually took me less than a minute. So not only it wasn't enough for me to delete the app off of my phone, I had to actually go into the settings, log myself out of all of my accounts, then delete the app off of my phone. And then, because my brain is so good at finding workarounds, before I did this, I didn't have the app on my phone. I had it on my internet browser, so I would just go Instagram.com on my phone, on my internet browser. So I had to, on the internet browser, also log out of the account and then delete that from the most recently visited. Our brains are so good at finding workarounds and so good at finding justifications for our behavior. So I just being very, very honest, for me to greatly reduce my procrastination tendencies, I had to get very honest and ruthless with my distractions. I also will put my phone on do not disturb if I'm in the middle of something. So if I've set a timer to work on something for 30 minutes that actually requires my focus, I'll put my phone on do not disturb. I just talked about setting up resistant points. So yours might not be social media. Yours might be something else. Maybe yours is getting snacks out of the cupboard. Maybe yours is Netflix. Maybe yours is reading a book even. Maybe yours is taking a nap. I don't know. Whatever your resistant points are, you know what they are, that you need to set up, or not your resistant points, but your distractions, the ones that are most potent to you. You need to figure out creative ways to set up resistance to those distractions. And what I discovered is that when I was being really ruthless about limiting my distractions, I procrastinated much less, because I didn't have the option of not being in whatever I was feeling. I didn't have the option of not being bored, or I didn't have the option of not feeling how overwhelmed I was about something and actually doing something to address the overwhelm. I didn't have something that could take me out of that feeling. And so I have just seen, even just like in a week, I have seen a significant shift in my relationship with procrastination. It's been really positive, been really, really positive. So just set up as many resistance points as you can to the thing that is most potent for you for your distractibility. Number 4, if something isn't working, try something else. So if you have tried, a bunch of tactics to address your procrastination tendencies and they're not working, stop it. Albert Einstein said that you can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it. You can't solve a problem with the same mind that created it, which means that we have to tap into our creative problem solving, which requires us to think about things differently than we have before. It requires us to try things differently than we have before. So if you have attempted to address your procrastination and you've tried the same one thing 10 different times, it's time to start trying 10 different things one time each to see what helps. See what helps. And when it stops helping, try something else. So be very creative in your problem solving when it comes to your procrastination. And number 5, I think that this likely will resonate with many of you, is that you have to stop requiring perfection. Many times procrastination is a byproduct of our desire to make sure that things are perfect. We want things to be perfect because if they're perfect, we can avoid pain. If they're perfect, it means that we're worthy. If we're perfect, it means that we're not broken. If we're perfect, it means that we're perfect. And perfection does not exist. Years ago, I heard this idea of be okay with B- work. And that is so hard. That's so hard for me. And it's so hard for many of us because we spend 12 years learning that A+ work is the work that gets rewarded, is the work that is important. And you have to get okay with understanding that that's not actually how the world works. That's not actually how the world works. It's not about how perfectly you do something. Sometimes it's just about getting it done. Sometimes done is better than, done is always better than perfect, right? I probably wouldn't apply that to like if you're cooking chicken. make sure the internal temperature is perfect, please. Not just looks done. Don't use B- work when you're cooking poultry. Anyway, but aside from that, stop requiring perfection. Perfectionists can struggle the most with procrastination. And I understand that that's not really a simple technique. So maybe it doesn't actually belong in this first section on easy, practical, simple ways to reduce your procrastination. But if you are a perfectionist and you're finding yourself procrastinating because that's what you're requiring of you is perfection, it's just a nice little pointer to start looking at other areas of your life that maybe do need to be addressed differently. Okay, so none of these little procrastination techniques matter if the things that you're procrastinating are meaningless. Okay, what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that if the task that you're procrastinating on, you don't actually care about because it's not part of a bigger value, it's not part of something that is actually really important to you, what's the point in getting better at not procrastinating on those things? Because then you're just continuing to fill your life with stuff that doesn't really matter to you. And all right, here's a little bit of a like next level up way to think about this. Perhaps the small things that we are procrastinating on are actually our procrastination method of choice for the bigger things. Let me try and make that a little bit more clear. If we have these simple things that we are procrastinating on, perhaps we are using our focus on those small things to avoid making some of the bigger decisions in our life. So I think many people, maybe not currently, but I know that you've likely experienced this, just have this like undercurrent of dissatisfaction in your life, or you have a sense that something is not quite right, or something is off, or something needs to be addressed and you are not giving that attention. Some of you are procrastinating. I'm just going to read this list. I just kind of did a little brainstorming session, and I'm going to read this because likely something on this is going to resonate with you and help you start to think about what I'm talking about. Okay, so some of you are procrastinating making decisions or taking action in your career. Do you want to apply somewhere else? Do you want to stay where you're at? You want to start a business? You want to close a business? Do you want to change your business? Okay, some of you are procrastinating that. Some of you are procrastinating in your relationship. You want to ask for commitment. You want to break up. You don't like your friends, but you keep hanging out with them. Some of you are procrastinating when it comes to your religion. You know that it doesn't fit you anymore, but you're scared to leave. You're scared to leave maybe really practically, like what that would look like for your life, but also maybe you're afraid to leave because that feels on a deep level very unsafe. Are you procrastinating looking at that? Perhaps you are procrastinating when it comes to your living situation. Do you want to buy a home? Do you want to sell your home? Do you want to move out of state? Do you want to move out of the country? Do you want to move into a tiny home? Do you want to move into a tent? Do you want to move into a mansion? Some of you are procrastinating getting help for your addiction. Some of you are procrastinating addressing your trauma. Some of you are procrastinating seeing a therapist for the first time or seeing your therapist again. I want to go back to what I said at the beginning, that whether they're big or small things, we're procrastinating feeling however we actually feel. We are trying to avoid however we actually feel. And if we can busy ourselves with all kinds of little things, then we can effectively distract ourselves from the really big things. And I know that many of us, maybe all of us, don't really pay attention to things until they hurt. So we've got this, we got a new bed frame, and the old one is in our living room. And I asked my husband if he would be in charge of taking care of that. He said yes, he would. And so I'm like, I'm not going to nag. I'm not going to say it again. I'm not going to be like, when is this getting picked up? I'm just letting it be. And several days went by, and then he said, yeah, I'm going to get in touch with, so-and-so to come and get that this week because I stubbed my toe on it. And I thought, oh my God, what a great illustration for what all of us do. We avoid the things, and I'm not even saying that this is what he was doing, but the metaphor applies here, that we avoid doing the hard thing, even if the hard thing isn't that hard, but we avoid doing the hard thing until it's too painful for us to avoid it any longer. Like we can't ignore it. The pain has gotten acute, and we are finally at a point where we can't look away anymore. It is requiring us to look at it. And some of you have been in mild pain in some of those areas for a long time. Some of you for a really long time. Some of you have been in jobs that you've hated for decades, or a relationship that hasn't been working for years. Some of you have friends that you have been friends with since childhood, and you don't fit with them anymore, and you're afraid to change those relationships or end them. What I want to suggest is that the ways that you can start to address your procrastination in these big things, one of them is to get better at procrastinating in the little things. The better we get at not avoiding hard emotions when it comes to simple things, the better we get, the more capacity we have to stop avoiding the hard things at a bigger level. So what I want to suggest would be really, really helpful is 3 things. One is to get super duper clear on your values. The more clear you are on what is most important to you, the less tolerance you have for anything that is not that. Anything that bumps up against the things that are most important to you. Anything that doesn't align with what is resonant to you on the deepest level. And then you don't allow yourself to stay in those situations anymore where you feel like that for an extended period of time. You get much less tolerant for any kind of internal resistance or internal chaos or that hum beneath the surface that says that something is not quite right. The more clear you are on your values, which in turn bring clarity of purpose and direction in your life, the less tolerance you have for that kind of like that internal knowing that something's not right. You will address it more quickly. The next practical way is to get to know your true yes. Do you know what yes feels like? Do you know what no feels like? We are so good at saying yes when we want to say no, and we say no when we want to say yes. There's a lot of evidence that suggests that we do that because we are hardwired for belonging. So we make sure that we say yes, even though we want to say no, because we are hardwired to make sure that we stay part of the group. We're hardwired to make sure that people still like us. We're hardwired to make sure that people still accept us, that we are needed, that we are an important part of the group. And what I want to suggest is that if you are saying yes to things that you want to say no to, you will never feel like you belong because people are never really seeing who you are then. And when you say yes, when you want to say no, or vice versa, that is when you create that internal dissonance because you know on a deep level that that's not true. So get to know your true yes. A really simple way. And I didn't come up with this, but I can't remember the person to give them appropriate credit for this. But this exercise that you can go through to understand what yes feels like in your body. So why don't I'll go ahead and lead you through it or tell you about it quickly so that you can take the time on this after this episode, or you can pause it once you get the gist of it. So we're going to talk about what yes feels like in your body. So I want you to close your eyes if you want to, and I want you to imagine a time when someone invited you to something, or they invited you to a project, or asked you to be part of something, and you felt no hesitation to saying yes because you knew 100% that you wanted to do that. Now, it's not just enough to be like, okay, cognitively, yeah, I remember that. What I want you to do is imagine, really pull yourself into that moment where you felt in your body that leaning toward that yes. What does it feel like, and where do you feel that? Where do you feel that sensation in your body? Do you feel it in your belly? You feel it in your chest? What does it feel like? Is it warm? Is it cool? Does it have a color? Does it have a shape? Does it have movement? Does it move up or in a circle one way or the other? Does it move down? Do you feel, what part of your body do you feel it in? Okay, so take that feeling and cement it into your memory. Yes, that is what your yes feels like. Now think of a time when someone asked you to do something and you felt absolutely not. You felt, hell no, I'm not doing that. What did that feel like in your body? Where do you feel that? Is it warm? Is it cold? Is it hot? Is it in your chest? Is it in your throat? Do you feel it in your head? Do you feel it in your hands? Where do you feel that in your body? Is there any movement with that feeling? Is it moving up or down or around? Does it have a color? Does it have a shape? And cement in your memory what no feels like. Now, what you can do, the more that you trust yourself, the easier this gets. But what you can do is start applying that all the time. Now, where my resistant point comes up to this is, well, I can't just do what I want. That's not allowed. I can't just go through my life only doing the things that I want to do. this is where the previous step of getting really clear on your values is so important, because yes doesn't always feel great. It does. Sometimes the thing that we're saying yes to is a really, really difficult thing to do, but it's where it's located and how you know that it's true. So when you're super clear on your values, your yeses align with that. And you can tell the difference between a surface yes and a deep yes, like a little k knowing and a capital K knowing. I know that this is something that I want. I know that this is something that I don't want. So get to know your true yes and your true no. I've also heard it called your fuck yes, your fuck no. Fuck yes. What would that be like to move through life where you were so aligned and trusted that so much that you knew your life was exactly what you wanted to be because you only said yes to things that so deeply aligned with you? Whew. Okay, and then the last one. Well, the first one was get clear on your values, get to know your true yes. And the last one is get better at making decisions. I'm gonna do a whole nother episode on how to make better decisions, or how to make decisions better, because many of us use up so much energy in indecision. And I want to suggest that you already know what you want to do, but what you are struggling with is the why. You already know the what, you're wrestling with the why. Back to what I just said about, like, who am I to be able to go through life only saying yes to the things I really want to say yes to? The more in tune you are with your yes, the more in tune you are with your values, the shorter the gap is between deciding something and actually doing it. Because frequently we already decide in our bodies, and then we just spend all this time wrestling with our brains and doing the pros and cons list and trying to figure out how to make it make sense. And then if we make a decision that does not align with what we already know we want to do, we create so much internal conflict. And the more that we trust ourselves, the more clear we are on what we want our lives to look like and our purpose, the smaller the gap is between knowing something and doing something. And that is really what procrastination is that gap between knowing something and doing something. And there are, obviously, I shared with you 5 really practical ways to address procrastination in your life, but I didn't want this to just be another like blog post about how to stop procrastinating. I wanted it to be about what this means on a larger scale when it comes to how we feel about the lives that we currently have. And that so many of us procrastinate making change in our lives because we think that we're not worthy of the life that we want. We think that there's no way that we could get it. We've lost hope. We've lost a perspective of possibility. Perhaps we don't have the support system that we need. But procrastination is part of this bigger truth that we are scared. We're scared of the things that we really want. We're scared to take action on the things that we really want. We're scared that it's going to be really painful. And I'll just tell you, you don't have to be scared of it, maybe being painful. It will be painful. But the reality is that we cannot avoid pain, whether you stay or go, whether you stay in your job or you go to a new job, whether you stay in your house or you go to a new house. There's pain in both sides of the equation. So what do you actually want? Pick your heart. And in that autonomy to pick your heart, you not only build up such a deep level of trust for yourself, but you create for yourself relationships that are based on truth. Because when you're in relationships, whether they're professional or personal, that are based on how you actually feel, that is when you have true intimacy and connection with others. This is a big topic. And I'm sorry if you were coming here hoping for just the quick, this is how you stop procrastinating forever. But I hope that as I read through that list, especially of some of the big things that you're procrastinating on, I hope that you will give those things attention, because I want you to hear me. You are worthy of a life that is bursting at the seams with love. Love from others, love for others. You are worthy of a life that is full of connection. And I'm not suggesting that any of us gets out of this life unscathed, because there will be pain in our future. There will be loss. There will be friction and conflict. All of those things are just par for the course. But there's a difference between having that be the trend in life as the suffering that comes as a result of not telling the truth, not being real on a deep level. There's a difference between the suffering that comes as a result of that and the suffering that just comes as a result of being human. So as much as possible, if we can apply things that help us reduce the first kind of suffering that comes when we're not living authentically, the better off we're going to be. The more satisfied we are with our lives, the more satisfied we are in our careers, the more satisfied we are in our relationships. So that's what I've got for you today. If I will put all of these things in the show notes. So if you want to go back and revisit any of the stuff that I talked about, it's all there. The practical stuff and the big stuff. And I really would just highly suggest that you take some time, take some intentional focused time to ask yourself the question, what are the big things that I'm procrastinating on? What kind of life do I really want that I don't currently have? And I'm afraid to actually make choices to get to that. So before we go,